The room held its breath. Ms. Alisha Thompson slowly raised her hand, not to retaliate, but to steady herself. The sting on her cheek was sharp, but the insult burned deeper. For a split second, James looked proud of himself, as if he had just proven something to the world. He chuckled under his breath, completely unaware that every move he'd made had already sealed his fate. Security cameras blinked softly above them. "You've made a very serious mistake, James," Ms. Thompson repeated, her voice low and controlled. James laughed. "Relax. It was just a little tap. Don't act like this place is some empire." He glanced around at the glittering displays, dismissive. "You should be grateful someone like me even walked in." That was when Ms. Thompson stepped out from behind the counter. The click of her heels echoed across the marble floor, each step deliberate. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten him. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "Do you know why this store hasn't had a robbery in 10 years?" she asked calmly. James rolled his eyes. "Because you overcharge?" "No," she replied. "Because I pay attention." She tapped her screen once. Within seconds, the store's large digital display, usually reserved for luxury promotions, flickered. The live security feed appeared, replaying the moment from multiple angles. James's smug face, his raised hand, the slap, crystal clear. The customers murmured. Some pulled out their phones. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Ms. Thompson turned to the staff. "How long has he been disrespecting you?" No one spoke at first. Then a young sales associate swallowed hard. "He's been insulting us since he walked in," she said quietly, "calling us incompetent, saying we don't belong here." Another employee nodded. He demanded discounts and threatened bad reviews. Ms. Thompson's expression hardened, not at James, but at her team. "And none of you stopped him," she said softly. Heads dropped. She faced James again. "You see, this store isn't just diamonds and gold. It's built on respect, something you clearly lack." James's smile faded for the first time. "You can't do anything to me," he snapped. "I'll sue. I'll destroy this place online." Ms. Thompson smiled, slow, knowing dangerous. "Oh, James," she said, "you already destroyed yourself." The front doors opened as security entered, followed closely by police officers alerted moments earlier. One officer gestured toward the screen. "Sir, we'll need you to come with us." James's face drained of color. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding." Ms. Thompson turned to the customers. "I apologize you had to witness this," she said. "But let this be clear. No amount of money gives anyone the right to humiliate, harm, or disrespect another human being." As James was escorted out, whispers filled the store again. But this time, they weren't mocking. They were admiring. Ms. Thompson returned behind the counter, straightened a necklace in the display, and looked at her staff. "Next time," she said gently, "remember who you are. And remember, you never have to tolerate abuse." The room erupted in quiet applause. And just like that, the real lesson sparkled brighter than any jewel in the store. The words hung in the air like a ticking clock. James leaned against the counter, completely relaxed, even smug. He laughed again, loud, careless. 5 minutes, he scoffed. "Please, you think I'm scared of some dramatic countdown?" Ms. Thompson didn't answer. She simply kept walking. Her heels echoed through the showroom, slow and measured, each step amplifying the tension. She stopped near a glass display and folded her hands behind her back, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. This wasn't anger on display, it was control. The customers shifted uncomfortably. One woman clutched her purse tighter. A man near the door subtly stepped back, as if sensing a storm before the first drop of rain. James noticed the change but brushed it off. "Look at them," he said loudly. "You've scared your own customers. Bad for business, don't you think?" Ms. Thompson finally turned her head toward him. "Bad behavior is worse for business," she replied evenly. Behind the scenes, the store quietly came alive. Cameras adjusted angles. Microphones activated. A silent alert traveled through the building's internal system. Upstairs in a private office, monitors flickered on, replaying the last 10 minutes from every possible view. The staff felt it. They didn't know exactly what was happening, but they felt it. The senior sales manager wiped her palms on her blazer. A young cashier swallowed hard. For years, they had admired Ms. Thompson's leadership, her discipline, her fairness, her refusal to tolerate disrespect. But they had never seen this side of her. This calm, sharpened stillness was far more terrifying than shouting ever could be. 3 minutes, Ms. Thompson said. James frowned. You're counting now? Yes. He straightened, irritation creeping into his voice. You know what? I'll take my business elsewhere. Places that actually respect customers. No, she said softly. You'll stay. James blinked. Excuse me. Because leaving now, she continued, would mean you miss the consequences. The automatic doors locked with a quiet click. A few customers gasped. James spun around. Hey, you can't do that. Miss Thompson met his gaze. Private property, she said. And you forfeited your comfort the moment you raised your hand. The laughter drained from his face. 2 minutes. James glanced around, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on him. Phones were out now. Someone was recording. His reflection stared back at him from the polished glass. No longer powerful, no longer impressive. Just exposed. This is insane, he muttered. You're bluffing. Ms. Thompson tilted her head slightly. I've never bluffed in my life. The staff stopped whispering. They were watching now. Closely. 1 minute. James opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Footsteps echoed from the back hallway. Calm. Heavy. Professional. Ms. Thompson didn't look away from him. You walked in here thinking money made you untouchable, she said quietly. But respect is the real currency. And you're completely bankrupt. The door behind James opened. And in that moment, he finally understood. Those 5 minutes weren't a warning. They were a sentence. The sound of the clipboard snapping shut echoed louder than any shout ever could. Ms. Thompson stood tall behind the counter, her expression firm, unwavering. One by one, the names continued to fall from her lips, each one landing heavier than the last. Employees who had shared lunch breaks, birthdays, years of routine now stood frozen, their world tilting off its axis. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Carl opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again. Jenna shook her head slowly, as if refusing to believe what she was hearing. But we didn't do anything, someone whispered. That, Ms. Thompson replied calmly, is exactly the problem. The murmurs grew louder. Fear spread through the room like a crack in glass. Thin at first, then impossible to ignore. Customers watched in stunned silence as coats were grabbed, lockers opened, hands trembling. This wasn't rage. This was a lesson unfolding in real time. Ms. Thompson stepped forward, resting the clipboard on the counter. You all saw what happened, she said. You heard the insults. You felt the tension rise. And yet, every single one of you chose comfort over courage. She paused, letting the words sink in. I did not fire you because of his actions, she continued, nodding briefly toward James. I fired you because of yours. James shifted uncomfortably. His earlier confidence was gone, replaced by a tight jaw and darting eyes. This wasn't the outcome he had imagined. This wasn't power. This was exposure. You looked to the floor, Ms. Thompson said, addressing the staff. You stayed quiet. You hoped someone else would step in. Leadership doesn't begin at the top. It begins in moments like that. A veteran employee finally spoke, her voice shaking. We were scared. He was aggressive. We didn't know what to do. Ms. Thompson's gaze softened, but only slightly. Fear is human, she said, but silence is a choice, and choices define culture. James scoffed weakly. So you're really firing everyone because of me? Ms. Thompson turned to him slowly. No, she said. I'm firing them because this store deserves people who protect its values, even when it's uncomfortable. The weight of her words settled heavily over the room. She turned back to the staff. You're talented. Many of you are kind. But kindness without backbone allows harm to grow. And I refuse to let that happen here. Some employees cried openly now. Others stared ahead, stunned. A few nodded quietly, understanding dawning too late. Security waited patiently by the door. James swallowed hard. For the first time, he wasn't the center of attention. He was just a catalyst. The real reckoning wasn't about him anymore. Ms. Thompson placed the clipboard down and took a breath. "This store will reopen tomorrow," she said to the customers. "With new staff, new standards, and zero tolerance for disrespect." As the former employees filed out, the silence returned, but it felt different now. Heavy, reflective, honest. James stood alone at the counter, his reflection staring back at him from the glass. No applause, no victory, just the realization that his arrogance hadn't made him powerful. It had revealed everyone. And Ms. Thompson? She had made sure the lesson would never be forgotten. The once polished showroom turned chaotic. Drawers slammed shut. Handbags were yanked from lockers. A few employees spoke through tears, their voices breaking as they pleaded for another chance. "Please, Miss Thompson, we'll do better." Others said nothing at all, their faces stiff with shock as they walked past the glittering displays they had guarded for years. Customers stood frozen, witnessing the collapse of what moments ago had looked like a flawless luxury operation. A woman whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." A man near the entrance shook his head slowly, realizing this was no publicity stunt. This was real power being exercised. James felt it then. The shift. The air that once made him feel superior now pressed down on his chest. He tugged at his collar, his confidence draining fast. "I didn't think," he began, his voice cracking. "I was just messing around. People joke all the time." Miss Thompson didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look angry. She looked finished. "Jokes don't humiliate strangers," she said coolly. "Jokes don't rely on fear. And jokes never involve raised hands." James took a step back. "You ruined everything over nothing." She met his eyes. "No, James. You revealed everything." The last employee exited, the door closing softly behind them. The showroom was suddenly empty. No whispers, no footsteps, no safety net. Just James, the CEO, and the silent sparkle of diamonds that now felt painfully indifferent. 5 minutes have passed, Miss Thompson said. The security team stepped forward, firm and professional. James tried to protest, but his words tangled together, useless now. As they guided him toward the door, he glanced back desperately. No one defended him. No one sympathized. Outside, phones were already raised. Someone had recognized him. Another shouted questions. "Why'd you slap her? Do you regret it?" The doors closed behind him with a final click, cutting off the noise like a curtain drop. Inside, Miss Thompson exhaled slowly. She walked the length of the store, straightening a chair, adjusting a display, restoring order piece by piece. This wasn't damage control, it was reclaiming space. She picked up the phone and made a single call. "Open hiring," she said. "Immediate. And only people who understand one thing. Respect comes first." Across the city, the story spread like wildfire. CEO fires entire staff after customer assaults her. Comment sections exploded. Some argued. Others applauded. But one message echoed louder than the rest. Silence is not neutral. By the next morning, the store reopened. New faces stood behind the counters. A sign near the entrance read, "Luxury is more than what we sell. It's how we treat people." Customers stepped inside, curious, respectful, aware. And somewhere outside, James scrolled endlessly through headlines bearing his name, finally understanding that arrogance doesn't just cost money. It costs dignity. Ms. Thompson glanced up from the counter, calm and composed once more. The lesson had been taught. The standard had been set. And this time, no one would dare forget it. By sunrise the next morning, the story had escaped the walls of the jewelry store and taken on a life of its own. Clips from security footage, carefully blurred and cropped, circulated across social media. View counts climbed into the millions within hours. Comment sections overflowed with reactions: shock, anger, admiration. But one sentiment rose above the noise again and again. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. "Power doesn't yell," one comment read. "It stays calm." "Silence is also a choice," wrote another. Ms. Thompson watched none of it. She arrived at the store earlier than usual, unlocked the doors herself, and walked the showroom floor in silence. The space felt different now, Lighter, sharper, honest. Later that day, she made quiet calls and held private meetings. A few former employees were invited back, not because of seniority or convenience, but because they had spoken up after the incident. One had comforted a shaken customer. Another had called security before anyone else moved. Courage, Ms. Thompson believed, deserved recognition. The rest of the team was new. On their first day, Ms. Thompson gathered them in a semicircle beneath the chandelier. There were no long speeches, no dramatic warnings, just a simple statement. This store sells luxury, she said, but what we protect is dignity. If you ever see disrespect here, toward you, a coworker, or a customer, you speak up. If you stay silent, you choose a side. They nodded, every one of them. The atmosphere changed quickly. Customers noticed. People lingered longer. Conversations felt warmer, safer. The sign near the entrance, asterisk respect is mandatory asterisk, became more than decor. It became a promise. Across the city, James's name took on a different meaning. Business owners shared his story during staff meetings. Managers used it as a lesson on boundaries. Schools discussed it in ethics classes. Don't be a James became shorthand for unchecked ego and careless cruelty. He never gave interviews, never defended himself publicly. He didn't have to. The internet had already written the ending for him. Ms. Thompson, on the other hand, refused every request for commentary. When asked why, she simply said, "The lesson isn't about me." And that was true. It was about the cost of arrogance, about the danger of silence, about how quickly power shifts when values are clear. Weeks later, business was stronger than ever, not because of viral fame, but because people trusted the space. They knew what it stood for. One evening, as the store closed, a young employee hesitated before leaving. "Ms. Thompson," she said softly, "thank you for what you did." Ms. Thompson smiled faintly. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she replied. "I just refused to look away." The employee nodded, understanding. Some lessons come gently. Others arrive wrapped in consequences. And everyone who walked through those doors from that day on understood one thing clearly. In a place built on respect, a single mistake can change everything. And respect, once lost, is far more expensive than any jewel.